Good morning. This is Talk Back to Television, and I'm thrilled to be here with Fred Godfrey, who is still co-founder and CEO of Origin. Fred, how are you?
For today, at least, until someone better comes along. I'm very well, thanks, Rick. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you, bud. Okay, now, until someone better comes along, you have recently acquired a chief revenue officer who you were bragging about. So let's name drop a little bit so I can tag him when I do this.
Yes, so you're correct. About 8 weeks ago, maybe a scratch longer, we announced the arrival of Michael Rosen, our new CRO. He is the first C-suite hire that we have made in Origin's 6-year history. And to my point about until someone better comes along, if Michael is anything to go by in terms of putting a grown-up in the room with a C-suite title and C-level experience, then Origin could, I don't even know how far the company could go with a real CEO. So I'll have to work out a new title for myself, and maybe one day we will find one. But if anyone watching this wants to, throw their hat into the ring and take over my job, please give me a call.
Well, now speaking of jobs, you also have a new advisory board. Who are some of those
Yes.
folks?
Yeah, so while everybody says don't make all of your announcements at once, it's bad for, it's bad
But you've
marketing.
already made them, so now we're reviewing.
Well, no, I mean, we did announce a lot of things in the same week, actually. The first was the arrival of Michael Rosen after an exhaustive 3 or 4 month interview process. And then a few days later, we were extremely delighted, almost giddy, to finally announce that we have formalized a board of advisors. And it has been a 6 or 7 month journey to get there. We've talked about it for years. But really, starting about 9 months ago, Stephen and I realized that we were repeatedly getting into positions of sort of decision paralysis, and we needed a good, rounded group of experts who we could turn to, who would ideally help provide us with mentorship and guidance as we seek to take Origin through the next phase of its growth as a 6-year-old business. And so, yes, we did. We announced our advisory board, and it's fantastic. I'm already using it a lot, and we're going to have our quarterly meetings. We've got monthly gatherings and newsletters that go to them so they can keep on top and know what we're doing. It's been fantastic. It just provides validation when we're not certain about something, or critique when we're not certain of something.
Okay,
Like they
well,
are instructed to say no as much as anything else.
there you go. Now, this being social media, we need to drop a few names. So, who are the people that you have on your advisory board? Assuming you can remember them all.
Yes, it's only four. So Peter Naylor, former Netflix, Snap, Hulu executive, who I've
One of the
known
most
for about,
respected individuals in the television advertising business, I must say.
and one of my best friends in this industry as well. I met him in 2015 when I was at Tremor launching the SSP, and he was at Hulu, and I've stayed friends with him ever since. And he has always been a good guide and a good advocate, and he's a big believer in the importance of the creative. Jerry Chang he serves on our advisory board as our legal counsel. He's actually been with us since day zero, as a sort of an advisor and friend and advocate, and someone who is able to help us deal with, any basic legal needs without us needing to spend a fortune on it. John Ponkowski, who has a heritage and a pedigree that it's longer than my arm, and he is about the most humble professional in the industry that I've ever come across. You will have to squeeze out of him the discussions that he would have had with Steve Ballmer at Microsoft about the Surface. Like, he has all of the knowledge, but he doesn't do what others do. He doesn't gloat, but he's ready to provide simple, straightforward advice. And then last but certainly not least is Chris Carl. Who is at JG Leonis, formerly JG Clarity. He obviously works in investment banking. And for the last 2 years, as we have gone through spates of people coming to us for acquisition and strategic partnerships, he has always been someone who has offered us, donated us his time to help provide us with a little informal guidance as to how we might want to approach a possible exit with whoever may be talking to us that day. And it has pleased us a lot that we can now formalize his relationship with Origin so it doesn't make us feel so bad when we get to use his brain. But between them all, we cover banking, business, sales, and legal. And as as a rounded group, we couldn't ask for anything better.
So, it would appear that you guys are growing up. You
Growing
you
up.
have gone through the stage of being a startup and you are growing and showing the industry what you can do. So tell us what you can do for the people who are watching this.
Well, we can make ads better, right? That's ultimately it. We started saying years before other people knew it, thought it, believed it, or wanted to believe it, that the creative matters. What someone sees, like as still a connected TV only business in a very difficult environment, we have always led with the fact that what someone sees matters, and what someone sees can affect the outcome even more than your clever targeting or your data usage, right? And so for anyone who hasn't heard of Origin, we are engaged by a brand or their media agency or their creative team. We are provided with the asset that there is the standard traditional ad creative, and then we go to work on it, whether
Now,
it's producing an extension to that ad or an overlay to that ad, which other people do, but very differently to us. And we help that brand tell a better, bigger, bolder story that is in line with whatever their objectives are for that budget.
given that we are, as an industry, a little panicked about Gen Z, who, by the way, in a conversation I had with somebody else not too long ago, Gen Z, as 13 to 25-ish, is exactly the audience that MTV originally was targeted to and appealed to, and essentially redefined the cable television side of the business that many years ago. Are you looking to do your, and I'm going to call it customization, but it's not really. Are you looking to do your work where you can appeal to one particular audience versus somebody else? Are you down to that level that the kids are going to love this? Are you having that conversation?
It's funny you mentioned that. So we ran a campaign for Visit Florida last year. They're one of our larger travel clients, and we love working with them. And their agency Miles partnership are some of the nicest people in the world. But there was one campaign that we ran, and we do a few of them a year, where they actually really wanted to leverage our creative abilities, you know, for precisely what they were built for, right? Here's our ad, they said, but here's the problem. We can't make one ad, convince a Gen Z 1,000 miles away and have the same ad convince a boomer
To the
who's
grandparents who are
900
going to be
miles away.
taking the Gen
Right.
Z.
So
Right.
they said, could you enhance this? Could you enrich it with different stories and different narratives and different language and different incentives and ways of appealing, so we could send a version of it that will bring a Gen Z on an airplane for 2 hours, and then have a version of it that will convince the grandparents and the baby boomers, to sort of swap their walking sticks for sun hats and come in. And it was such a good real use of our creative solutions, and we had great fun with that campaign. It allowed us to demonstrate to them how how refreshing and how dynamic our creative solutions are, because not only did we send a different flavor of the story to different living rooms based on the age, but
There.
every single time they saw it, they saw something different, which is incredibly important in the living room, where you don't want the ad fatigue, but you need to get the right number of exposures. But if you actually come in with the punch of showing them something different, and they notice in the first 3 seconds, hey, this is that ad, but it's different.
Yep. Yep.
Now you've really got them. But there's another cool thing you get to do there. If you really pay attention to how the campaign is doing during the course of its lifetime, you might notice that one part of your message is better than another. that one incentive is working better than another, and you can start to actually sort of refunnel and refocus what's working towards the rest of the budget and start making tweaks, to the creative story, to the message, to the colors, to the music, to whatever it is that we may be enriching their primary creative with, in order to make sure that we're really squeezing everything we can out of that lemon.
Wait a minute. That means that a major brand could hand you a canned spot. It's
Yep,
the campaign this quarter, and you do your enhancements to that.
yep.
And they can then read how those enhancements are enhancing, if it's the right word, different parts of that spot so that when they work on next quarter's campaign, they can say, this is what we learned last time. Is that real?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean that we do that a lot. We do that a lot with Macy's as well, actually, in the retail side. We've probably built more unique ad extension templates for Macy's than we have for anybody else. And we now have what we call sort of the Macy's Creative Bible. And each of the different templates we produced were designed to help accomplish certain different things at certain times of year, whether it was back to school, whether it was Christmas, Mother's Day, Father's Day, whatever it may be. And they get to look at the results afterwards and they get to say, "Ooh, let's go in this direction for the next campaign." But also what's important is during the campaign, we get to provide, feedback and tell them what's working, what isn't, which we did for Chinet in 2024. And it was a really good example actually of us being able to admit that we had had a terrible idea. So about 2 months into the campaign, we noticed that our enhancements weren't doing what we needed them to do for the client. So we sat down, we scratched our heads, tucked our tail between our legs, went to the client and said, "We've not got this right." And they said, "Okay, so let's fix it." So we did. And the next 9 months of that campaign, it was a full year flight, absolutely hit it out the park. So, that was a great example of actually really paying attention to how your creatives are performing during the flight and not just afterwards.
Let me ask a kind of logistics question. You just said a full year flight. So I'm going to
Yeah,
assume that with that client, there was a collection of spots they sent you. It wasn't just one spot, right?
correct. Yes,
And they
every,
kind of timed out and you were doing your enhancements.
yep.
How
And
long
so
does it take
maybe,
you to turn the enhancements around? If I give you if I've got a campaign that's going to start in 4 months and I've got my spot in the can you get it up and ready for me in 4 months?
yes. So our time frame, if let's say you're Rick Howe Hawaiian T-shirt company, right? And you've got your
Ought
15
to do
second
that,
ad.
but
You've
okay.
got your 15-second ad and you want to put, try different CTAs or incentives or whatever it is. You want us to build on top of your 15-second spot. The creative time frame from signing the IO to launch is 28 days. That's how long
28
we
days.
ask of our client to go from scratch, fresh, never worked with you before, to building the concept, the creative concept and the design, looking at every single pixel in your ad, understanding the quiet spots where we can maybe make a noise, which is where we operate differently in the overlay world, because a lot of overlays just cover the ad. And I'm like, why did you spend all that money on the ad if you're going to do that? So we do all of that assessment. We then go to concepts. We send wireframes back to show to the client how we think it might look, what we think it should do. They send their feedback and then it goes into production. The whole thing from scratch is up to 28 days, as long as you're quick providing the feedback.
Of
But to
course.
your
Okay.
but
Now,
to your question about if you're running a full year campaign and you've got a new spot
yep.
and we're going to be repurposing the enhancement, onto the new spot, that we typically do in about a week. So as long as the client's able to give us the new asset, we do that a lot for Ford. We do a lot of tier two Ford upstate, and they have different deals or different incentives and different vehicles that they have like their canned spots for. So we typically work those on a sort of on a current rotation.
Are you going to be working with politicians in the 2026 election?
We have made a vow not to try to work with politicians or politics ever again.
How about issue oriented?
Social issues,
Yeah.
100%.
Okay.
Like,
So that,
uh,
all right. So if I'm coming up to the campaign
mhm,
next November, and I have a social issue about Save the Hawaiian Shirts.
Yep.
And I am going through August and September, and I am losing steam. It's not getting the kind of attraction that I want. The people that I want to influence are not paying attention to it.
Yeah.
You could actually, on October 30th, turn that around for me,
I do.
assuming I've got the whole logistics
Yeah.
of getting it out there. I could have that new spot running on November 1st, couldn't I?
100%. Like, absolutely. And I mean, trust me, when I say that we vowed never to work with politicians and politics and election seasons again, it's because honestly, there is no better use or vertical for what we can do. There is nothing better. But we never broke through. It's such a tightly guarded world that we had all of the discussions with all of all of the groups, all of the campaigns and everything, just never went anywhere. And we spent so much time and so much money trying to make it happen. We even sponsored one of Tracy's shows to talk about political advertising
Yep.
coming into that election season. We even did a nationwide survey where we asked 10,000 households around America, like, what would make a political ad on TV something that you might be more receptive to? Like, we had the knowledge, but we never secured the bucks, but it was a terrible distraction. So we won't be wasting that time again.
I understand that. All right. Last thing, you won an award from Synopsis for
Yes.
the Media Impact Award. What was that?
Yep. Synopsis Media Impact Awards 2025. Whoop, whoop. We won top spot for best personalization technology. And I was thrilled to bits, honestly. Like, it was for my one of my favorite travel campaigns, and because I don't want to single anyone out too much, one of my favorite travel clients that we represent, which is Visit Maine. And it was their fall 2024 campaign. You can see it on the client stories page on our site. And they wanted to really compete with the surrounding states, which are all exceptionally beautiful during the fall.
Yep.
They really wanted to make sure that they were remembered and that people would maybe drive through Vermont to go to Maine. And so we put together one of the most elaborate sort of creative enhancement strategies for their spot. And it included um, flight times based on the location of the person watching the ad. It included daily foliage reports, so you know how close to peak season you were going to
Okay.
be.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Tomorrow's and the weekend's weather forecast, which we would share with people within driving distance, so they could make short-term sudden decisions to drive to Maine. And all of this would change every single day, all around their fixed 15, I think it was a 15, maybe a 30-second spot. And we loved it. Maine was happy with it. Maine's agency was happy with it. And clearly, so were the judges at Synopsis. So we were absolutely delighted with that win.
Wicked cool, buddy. All right, listen, we're going to have to get you on camera more frequently than we've been doing. I'm visualizing, the Freddie Godfrey show here somewhere.
Yeah, people asking when I'm going to start a podcast with Stephen, and we just don't know what to call it. We're thinking about calling it sort of two rabbits, one hole, because both of us, when we're not medicated, have really quite impossible ADD. And I think if I was to aggregate all of the conversations we've started and not finished since we went into business together, I think we would be a sort of the full length of pie. Like, there is no way of being able to count exactly how many times we haven't finished a discussion.
I get that. All right, Fred Godfrey, buddy. Thank you for your time. This will air in a couple of weeks and we'll talk again.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you so much.